Hi, this is Rich Lieberman. The Bay Area Media Pulse is live on the air on YouTube. If you're watching live, great. Welcome to the show. If you're watching at a later date, also welcome aboard. You know, I I talked the other day about Guy Haberman. I'd never heard of the guy, and that's not a knock on this guy. I guess he's got some credentials, but I never heard of him. I know he did a show on the FM sports station 95.7 The Game, owned by the Odyssey folks. Um, and he was the temporary replacement for Greg Papa on the TV broadcast, which I also discussed on Sunday, and spoke about the fact that, well, the production was horrible. And don't tell me about the fact of, well, what have I heard about the fact? Excuse me, I just adjusted the camera here. Well, it's preseason for the TV people too. Well, it is, but guess what? That doesn't count. They're supposed to be prepared. And believe me, there's a lot of sponsorship. There's lots of money involved here. So sorry. But back to the main thrust of this broadcast. So Bob Fitzgerald, who is not liked, who is not respected by a few people, apparently, though, and who is detested, was ultimately given the radio job to do the games with Keena Turner, an executive with the 49ers, and Dennis Brown, a former player who's, to me, very average at best. On television, this guy, Haberman, worked alongside Tim Ryan. Now, I know at least two people that would have been far superior to work, better equipped, more suited, more qualified than both Haberman and Bob Fitzgerald. And I'm going to plug them today, a good recommendation for whatever that's worth, and tell you why I think that they would have been far more qualified. And one is very well known, the other one is not that well known. So first and foremost, we'll go to the one that is well known, and that's Roxy Bernstein. And by all accounts, he was available to do the broadcast if called upon. Roxy Bernstein is very, very busy these days. He does ESPN baseball. He does ESPN pro football, various other networks from the Bay Area, actually from Oakland. Was thought at one point to be amongst people to replace Joe Starkey, but given the fact that he's got all these national credentials, ESPN, college basketball, hockey, baseball, the NFL, probably would not have been interested in doing those jobs or that job whatsoever. But nevertheless, I like the guy. I've had him on my show, and it's not to say that I'm biased. Maybe I'm a little bit biased, but whatever. I thought he would have been far more qualified and pertinent, if you will. If you listen to Roxy or watched him on ESPN, he does a lot of baseball, has done television. You know what I'm talking about. The other guy is somebody you probably don't know much about. I've mentioned him here, but his name is George Devine Jr. Now, I caught up with him accidentally. I heard him do women's basketball, of all things, for USF. Very, very solid, professional, sense of humor, knows the sport. Would have been fantastic. And look, this being the process of whoever's temporarily replacing Greg Papa. We've heard that hopefully Papa will be back maybe during the regular season. And again, just to kind of tell you the situation with Greg Papa, he is the 49ers chief broadcaster on radio, does the preseason games, and was diagnosed with cancer sometime back, made the announcement publicly a couple of Fridays ago, and thus you have this void, and with temporary replacements doing the various jobs on both radio and television. But George Devine, very underrated, extremely, extremely solid broadcaster. Full disclosure, I don't know this guy well. I know of him. We've exchanged glances in the press box when I was covering sports years back. Knew his dad, his late father, who was just a really, really wonderful person, George Devine Sr. But back to George Devine Jr. Does USF basketball, women's side. I know he's done some other broadcasts. He's done a lot of high school football. And you might say, well, that's high school football, Rich. That doesn't qualify him. Excuse me. The guy has credentials, and he knows sports, and he's got a tremendous voice, and he would have been an out and out gem of a broadcaster, I think. And I'm saying, didn't tell me to say it, I'm saying it. On an outside note, speaking of people that could have done the job on a very, very last minute basis, for some reason were not considered. Maybe they were, I don't know. Ultimately, Haberman got the position. And it's temporary, but nevertheless, Guy Haberman, who to me is boring at best. Just really doesn't add anything. Very nocturnal, very, I don't want to say unprofessional, because by all accounts, the guy's solid, a professional, but just didn't have the, that thing I talk about with anchors, the it factor. And there's no excuse about, well, we didn't have, they say, supposedly, there wasn't a lot of time to go out and get even a temporary fill-in. No. This has been known for at least 2 weeks, perhaps even before we, the public, got word of it. So that's not an excuse. There's several people out there qualified to do the duties of play-by-play broadcaster. Finally, on Bob Fitzgerald, I was personal, and I've always prided myself on saying that I don't go personal. But in this case, I had to. So got a lot of people that reacted to that, both on the site and off. And Bob Fitzgerald is not a very nice person. I can say that. I'm not heavily invested in people's opinions in terms of those he knows. I don't have to worry about advertisers telling me I can't say what I can say. That doesn't mean I'm going to come on here and just lambaste somebody to lambaste somebody. This person, folks, is a very, very disgusting person. He has worked behind the scenes to hurt people. He's worked behind the scenes, literally grabbed somebody's job, including somebody, by the way, named Greg Papa. He acts totally different than what he puts out on the air. He knows people in high places. Somebody asked me about play-by-play people. There are those who get the job because they're good, and there are those who get the job because they know people. So Fitzgerald, they put him on KNBR, and although nobody hardly listens to KNBR, even when there's football, although they did during the regular season, of course they get an audience. Bob Fitzgerald is chummy with various people in the Bay Area sports world, executives. I mentioned Joe Lacob, which is the only reason why he's on the Warriors broadcast. Plus, Jed York, a fellow Notre Dame alum. Bob Fitzgerald went to Notre Dame. And he's chummy. And he's schnitzy. Snitzy, I should say. Look it up. And he purports to be somebody with a sense of humor and is not, affected by bias and regional bias and overall bias, tells it like it is, which is complete and utter bullshit. He doesn't. He is chummy with, I mentioned Lacob, I mentioned Jed York, a Notre Dame alum, and a few suck up media types like Brian Murphy, who sucks up to him. Papa, for his credit, sucked up to him for whatever reason. I guess because they're professional. He is. But Bob Fitzgerald is not a very nice person. I can call him out. I'm not indebted to his future. I've seen him act and know about certain things that are not public at all because various writers and people in the know don't want to risk any kind of adverse reaction, and they put up with his putz and schmuck that he is. I can say it. I can tell you the truth and give you my unbiased opinion because I'm not beholden to certain interests. So what you heard me describe about Bob Fitzgerald, I'm on the record, and I would say it to his face. And if he came across me in the future, I will say it to his face. He knows that. He knows that. I don't hide behind computers. I don't make charges and blast, super hyperbolic shit without identifying myself. I've always been very proud to say my beliefs are based on my beliefs. Nobody buys me out. Nobody has tried to. But I know people out there who suck up because there's a connection. There's some kind of a justify or means justify, or the ends justifying the means angle. So I wanted to get that out of the way. Had a little bit of a bad back. I'm feeling a lot better, and some other personal issues that hit me on Sunday night. So I apologize for coming on late Monday. I'm feeling a little better, and we'll be talking about various things in the biz. And I just wanted to get this out of the way and let you know my feelings on said topics. I hope you're having a great Monday evening, and we will see you later. Thanks for listening and watching here on YouTube.